Hello and welcome to the Pretty Good Gaming Daily Triple, your no shit gaming news video. That's 3 news stories in one video with zero faff. Making video games is very expensive. That means developing new IPs is a huge risk. That's exactly what PlayStation boss Jim Ryan said to GQ in a recent interview. When asked about the company's strategy of building a library of successful exclusives on PS5, Ryan said, "We've invested a lot organically over the course of the PS4 generation, more than people realize. We've added Insomniac games through acquisition, we're making great games now, and we certainly plan to continue making great games. The thing with those blockbuster games is they need a box office release. They cost more than $100 million to make these days, and in order to be able to do that and bring new IP to the market, which is a very risky thing to do, and we did it 4 times in the PS4 generation, you've got to have a box office release." Jim Ryan mentions 4 box office IPs, but when we widen that net to include not just first-party games, but PlayStation exclusives as a whole, that new IP list gets much bigger. Bloodborne, Drive Club, Knack, The Order 1866, Entwined, Until Dawn, The Last Guardian, Horizon Zero Dawn, Alienation, Matterfall, Bound, Detroit Become Human, Days Gone, Ghost of Tsushima, Concrete Genie, Dreams, and Death Stranding. An argument could be made that Spider-Man should be included in there since Sony financed it and it was an original story, but ultimately it's still based on the most profitable superhero of all time, so it doesn't count as a new IP. Similarly, The Last Guardian is kinda in the same universe as Eco and Shadow of the Colossus, but I'd still say it's its own thing. Anyway, launching new IPs is extremely expensive and therefore extremely risky, because if they flop, that's a lot of money down the toilet. Days Gone is one of the most underrated games of the past few years, but I don't think it performed very well. That game clearly had a lot of money behind it, but it failed to hit with critics and many people wrote it off as just another zombie game. Fortunately, players took to it a lot more and it did find its fan base, but it's a lot of money to spend on a game that just wasn't a smash hit like many other Sony IPs. I'm really hoping we do get a sequel to Days Gone because it's exactly the kind of game that will get it so right on the second try. It's the kind of game that had its fair share of teething problems, but those are issues that could easily be rectified in a follow-up. It even sets up a sequel nicely in the end game ending. Another game that I hope gets a sequel for a similar reason is The Order 1886. That game is absolutely amazing on paper. Sure, it looks incredibly pretty and still does in 2020, but there's just not enough game in the game. A sequel could give the franchise a second chance to really capitalize on that brilliant premise of being steampunk knights hunting werewolves. What more do you need? Oh wait, you need actual gameplay. However, I somehow think that's very unlikely since the first one wasn't that successful, and the studio Ready at Dawn has been focusing on VR games since releasing The Order. Sony doesn't own that studio, and it's not going to throw $100 million at something unless it's sure it's going to be a hit, because, after all, Sony is in it to make money. What I personally want from Sony is more experimentation. I own most of the PS4 exclusives, and many of them are among my favourite games, but they all tend to fit in a similar box because that's a safe investment. They're almost exclusively flashy, narrative-driven, third-person action-adventure titles, which happens to be what I and many gamers clearly really enjoy. But where are the first-person shooters? Where are the real-time strategies? Where are the puzzle games? Where are the fighting games? Where are the platformers? New IPs in any of those genres are riskier than your Uncharted's or God of War's, but that's what I'm hoping for in the future. Sony is trying a few new things, like bringing back platformers with Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart and a car combat game with Destruction All-Stars, both of which look excellent. I just hope they keep this kind of thinking going across the new generation. Still, even if they do keep making third-person action-adventure story-driven games, that's totally in their wheelhouse, so it will be a success, and they're pretty damn good at doing it. And next up, everyone loves The Last of Us. It's a genre-defining game and is considered by many to be one of the very best video game stories of all time. Its sequel, which launched earlier this year, even though it feels like a lifetime ago, isn't quite so fondly remembered by some. It's either the greatest feat in video game storytelling the world has ever seen, or a pile of woke SJW trash that shat on the legacy of the previous game. I'm sure the comments are already filling up with those kind of sentiments. Fortunately, we're not talking about the games today, and instead we're looking at the upcoming TV adaptation by HBO. The show was previously announced back in March before the devastating leaks that fractured the fan base prior to Part 2 even launching. It has now officially been picked up for a full season by HBO, with HBO programming executive vice president Francesca Orsi saying, "Craig and Neil are visionaries in a league of their own. With them at the helm alongside the incomparable Carolyn Strauss, the series is sure to resonate with both die-hard fans of The Last of Us games and newcomers to this genre-defining saga. We're delighted to partner with Naughty Dog, world world games Sony and PlayStation to adapt this epic, powerfully immersive story. Craig Mazin is writing the show, and he previously wrote Chernobyl, which was brilliant, and I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. And Neil Druckmann is the game's director and writer, and he's overseeing the project as executive producer. Carolyn Strauss is a producer for HBO and has produced shows like Game of Thrones and Chernobyl, and also commissioned shows like Sopranos and The Wire while working as the president of HBO's entertainment division. John Rank, yet another Chernobyl alumni, was set to direct the pilot episode but left the project due to scheduling conflicts. Sony Pictures TV Studios president Jeff Frost and PlayStation Productions head Asad Kizilbash said in a joint statement, "We're thrilled to be working with HBO and this fantastic creative team to bring The Last of Us series to life. PlayStation's innovative storytelling and ingenuity is a natural complement to Sony Pictures TV's creative focus. Our collaboration is a great example of our One Sony philosophy at work. We look forward to developing even more iconic game IP in the future." Despite being pretty lukewarm on Part 2 and neither loving it or hating it, I'm still very interested to see what the show has to offer. Some of the people involved have produced some really great stuff, and if the show is half as good as Chernobyl, it will be awesome. The fact that it has now been officially picked up for a full series is promising, and at the very least shows that HBO has some faith in it. The show is meant to focus most of its attention on the superior first game, which is pretty much universally loved, although it's not without its own flaws. Avoiding the controversial second game is the right move, though the public perception of the franchise as a whole has definitely been tainted by the sequel's reception. In terms of casting, people are throwing around names like Hugh Jackman, Nikolai Coster-Waldau, Josh Brolin, or Jeffrey Dean Morgan, all of whom are solid choices that I'd be totally happy with. Casting Ellie is a little trickier though, because she's only 14 but has to go through a lot of unpleasant stuff. Finding a young actor who can handle that and give it the appropriate level of innocence and vulnerability while at the same time embodying her fierceness and sense of humour is no small feat. Common suggestions for Ellie include Stranger Things stars Millie Bobby Brown and Sadie Sink, Maisie Williams, who may look 12 but she's actually 23, and Caitlin Dever. I've not seen anything Caitlin Dever has done, but she easily looks the most like Ellie, though obviously there's much more to it than just looking the part. That's not to say that Joel is an easy role to fill, as there is much more to him than just a grizzled old man, and any of those actors I mentioned could handle it. What actors do you think would be a good fit for these characters? Let me know in the comments. And on one quick final note, The Last of Us Part 2 has been nominated in loads of categories for the Game Awards, including the big one, and we discussed the nominations in last week's podcast, so check that out if you want to know more. And finally, last week I reported that Assassin's Creed Valhalla had beaten Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War to the #1 spot in the UK physical game sales charts. Now that digital figures are in, COD has reclaimed its top spot after selling 39% more digital units than last year's Modern Warfare. When physical and digital sales are combined, COD sits comfortably at the top, with Valhalla at #2. Despite this clear success, Activision Blizzard is expected to lay off a bunch more staff. MCV first reported that 100 employees were facing redundancy according to its sources, but Activision contacted them to correct the figure to around 30. So about 30 people are about to be made redundant in the middle of a global pandemic right before Christmas, all the while Activision boasts of record-breaking first-day digital sales. This isn't even the beginning of the layoffs wave, as the company recently shut down its French office in Versailles, even after cutting 134 of the 400 positions there last year. It's unknown how many employees at Versailles actually lost their jobs, but the Dutch office in Hague was also shut down in October. The company also recently announced that it was hiring for 2,000 new positions, despite all those layoffs. And at the beginning of 2019, Activision also culled 8% of its workforce, totaling around 800 people, once again, despite a record year of profits. So the next time you see someone getting offended about something in a video game, point them to this shit. The way Activision treats its employees like disposable grunts is something you should be offended by. Anyway, enjoy the new COD. Wait, that's assuming that the bloody thing actually works and doesn't bug out on you. And that's it for today. If you enjoyed this no shit format, go ahead and give the video a like to give it a boost, hit subscribe and the bell if you want to stay up to date on all future installments, toss a coin to your YouTuber over at patreon.com/prettygoodgaming. That's all for today. I've been Henry Cooper. Bye for now.